Hey guys, I want to talk about the changes to Last Gasp. I had it in its own section in another video, but I think this deserves its own section, right? Because they shadow changed Last Gasp without telling anybody. Like how the minion death timer works, it was completely different at the start of 0.3. The way Last Gasp worked at the beginning of 0.3 is if you had it socketed in, it would keep your minion alive after death for 4 seconds, and it would eat away 4 seconds from whatever the minion timer was, right? Because as you know, the death timer, as every minion dies, it resets. So if you look at the bottom of my skill bar, you see that timer reset every time I explode a warrior, right? You see it down here. That guy resets every death. And for the most part, that's the same. It hasn't changed with the minion death timer. As your minions cascadingly die, the timer resets to whatever time you have minus your revive points, right? And then the way Last Gasp worked was, if you killed him, he would still be alive for 4 seconds, and then after the 4 seconds, your minion would crumble, and it would basically remove 4 seconds off the death timer, and your minion would respawn in essentially 2 seconds. But it's changed, right? So I have a Tecrods in here. Let me show off these guys, the brutes. If you look at the brute, when the brute gets sacrificed, the timer doesn't start anymore, right? The timer actually starts when they crumble. So they've made this change to Last Gasp where the timer only starts once they crumble. There you go. See, he crumbled away. Now the minion death timer starts. But with that said, they changed it to where if a minion has Last Gasp on or a Tecrods, and there is a minion timer here, their death does not reset the timer. So what does that mean? Right, let's say here's a warrior. All right, let me put one. So here's this warrior. There's a timer, right? Let's blow up the brute. See, the brute's death doesn't restart it. Well, hang on. You have to wait for the brute to actually disappear. Hold on 1 second. Let's blow up the brute first. Right, we'll wait for the timer to start. And then you'll see when I sacrifice the warrior, the timer will reset. All right, wait for Tecrods. There you go, 6 seconds, and then I blow up the warrior. Boom, the timer resets, right? Resetted back to 6. But if we put in a Last Gasp into the warrior now, and we repeat the same thing, we blow up the brute, right, who has Last Gasp, and then we blow up the warrior, the timer does not reset. Hold on, wait for it, wait for it. There, 6 seconds timer. Let's blow up the warrior and the brute. You see the timer doesn't reset. So you can see how this kind of helps you out, right? Essentially what the Last Gasp mechanic does now is that it does not alter the death timer if a minion dies that does have it. So in the campaign, it's kind of useful because as your minions are cascadingly dying, there's only one death timer. And you can put in multiple Last Gasps. So the way I did campaign back in the start of 0.3 is all my minions had Last Gasp, and then I just spec'd for a minion death timer, so that way they would always constantly respawn. Because the original Last Gasp ate up 4 seconds of the minion death timer, but now with the new changes, once one minion reforms, the timer starts, and any minion that has Last Gasp that gets killed does not reset the timer. So essentially there's only one death timer. So what does that mean? The worst parts about it are if all your minions get wiped. Right, if everyone has Last Gasp and a boss does the AoE and they all get wiped, then they'll all effectively be under the same death timer because they'll all crumble at the same time. So I figured this is a way to combat people who are just speccing into minion revive and then putting Last Gasp on all the minions to have them perpetually be respawning, which would then trigger energy shield recharge perpetually, right? Because you'll have minions constantly reforming on their own death timer of a 1 second death timer. So those are the changes, right? So some things that you can do that's really fun with the Tecrod that I've been experimenting with is it does take up 2 sockets, but it is pretty fun. I've done this with my frozen mandibles, and it's actually really good. I have it right here. This is a sacrificial lamb with the Tecrods. So what I've been messing around with is the football team. I'll basically just have enough warriors or enough brutes in here with a brute party. A couple of these guys. And the thing that's nice if you're sacrificing skeletons is your clerics will actually revive them, they'll reform them. Too bad the clerics cannot reform specters. Otherwise, you know, you could just blow them up with Tecrods. Once the effect is over, your clerics will immediately revive them. But this is kind of fun if you're playing brutes. I've been trying to get this to work. It actually works decently well. Having the brutes get huge, you know, slamming down, hitting hammers and stuff, and then with their AoE shockwave, it actually lasts quite a bit of time. And then once the timer is over, with that timer, like I said, the clerics immediately respawn them. So another thing that's really fun is if you put it on the frozen mandibles, right? I've been messing around. My frozen mandibles are only level 32, and these guys are wrecking multiplayer maps. We're doing like 6-man, 5-man, juiced, abyss maps. And there's enough damage for these mandibles to just go ham, and even essentially with the brute. So I'll show a couple different scenarios with a couple different specters and stuff to show the Tecrod tech and how it plays. Essentially what's happening, right? Let's take these brutes off. What I like to do with my setup, I only have 3. I feel I really only need 3 of these guys. And then, you know, 5 storm mages with my blasphemy setup. I find that this setup is great for me for clearing. I have no issues with clearing. But essentially what I've been doing is just blowing up 2 ants, having them go Super Saiyan, and just wreck through the map. It's pretty enjoyable, especially when you're trying to find new ways to play and make the build enjoyable as you farm. But what I prefer to is I take my sacrificial lamb off of the warrior, right? So my warrior doesn't have it. And then let's just put something in here so he's alive. He also has last gasp though. I tend to have last gasp on everybody, so that way, you know, I'm not really affected by the death timer. And how I have my setup, because this is a mapping setup, there's more than enough power. Even though I'm missing, you know, you could think about it, it's not optimized for damage because I'm using 2 whole sockets. As far as mapping goes, for my mapping build, which is on my weapon swap, it's more than enough, especially in multiplayer maps that I've been playing. And then what I would do if I find a situation where it's a 6-player density, it's a heavy breach, I just switch to my powered zealots. Then once everything is settled through, go back into my mapping build. So enjoy some of the footage. Peace out. Here's a breach and a T15 map. Like, these are all the mods, right? Pretty good. It's got high quantity, high rarity. It's a T15. Yeah, so let's just look at the ants, right? This is how my ants are set up. Like, they're only level 32, right? Running a Tecrods, it's pretty fun. There's enough damage here. Right? Basic attack, they do 139. I could probably slot in. I could definitely slot in more damage stuff, right? To really push out their damage. But for how I'm playing with the Lich, with Rupture the Soul, and just using the Tecrods, it's super fun. So let's just do this breach and I'll kind of show you. Right? If you stagger the explosions, you'll only really ever have one that's down. Oops, hang on. Man, that weapon swap glitch is very, very annoying. It is very, very annoying. Hang on. Let me disable everything on the powered zealot setup. Okay. Here you go. We're on the ants. Right. Blow up an ant and then watch these guys just go to town. Right. They're huge. You can kind of see them. It's kind of hard to see. But it's just a fun way to play. Right. Blow up an ant. And then if you stagger the deaths of the ants, essentially you'll always have 2 up. Because like I said, when one dies, the timer doesn't reset, right? So there you go. Look at those 2 big ass ants. That guy is giant. He is a giant ant. Okay. So now that the restart timer is up, I can blow up the other ants, and then they'll go in Tecrods, and then they'll immediately respawn when the timer resets. So then I can blow up another one. You know, he's going. He's big as hell. Blow up another one. So it's pretty fun. It's really enjoyable, right? These guys are level 32, T15, maxed modded map, and this thing works really well even in 5-player, 6-player maps. I've been playing the same build, same power level, this many monsters, cast my pain offering every so often, and it's pretty good. So let's take a look at a different setup, right? What if, right? Let's say you want to use brutes. Let's say we use brutes, right? Give the brutes a shot. We got 6 brutes in the mix. Let's say we got 7. Let's make it fun, right? Two guys reviving. Hell, we're even missing one of these guys. All right, this is the football team build. Let's say you got a football team. Football team with the brutes. And what level are the brutes? Let's look at the brute damage. Right, their basic attack is only 20k DPS. But their thing is when they get a shockwave, it's 100k. Whenever they hit a shockwave. So ideally, more attack speed, more stuns. Right, I have stun 2 on them, damage, and then sacrificial lamb and a Tecrods. So let's hit this. Well, put up a pain offering, hit this, blow up a couple brutes, and then just let them go to town. And obviously, I'm also casting my unearth, you know. Let the brutes go, let them lead the way. So it's another fun way to use like any type of melee minion build that has AoE. Right? Just blow up a couple brutes, and then there, watch that guy. That dude is just getting giant. Right? So it's a blast. Especially this is like what, a brute build? So this is what I call the football team build. Run back this way. Right? Clear the area. Also, this is kind of like a tight map, so it's really kind of showcasing how good it is in a tight area. Right? See, so they just kind of clear. There's that brute, just ginormous, and he's just going to town. Look at him go. Right? Blow up 2 more brutes, and then have them just push out, and they're just pushing out. So you can see how fun it is, right? It gets pretty good. It's fun. It's a fun build. The minions are only like low level 30, so using Tecrods and Sacrificial Lamb, it's a fun way to just kind of play and make certain AoE monsters really fun to do. So I'll cut right here and we'll put on a different monster. Cut. Okay, we're back in. This time we're going to do the same thing with the Vile Vulture, right? I like the Vile Vulture. I always liked him. It's just, in order for him to be good, he is kind of, doesn't do enough damage. He's got an AoE attack. His basic attack is more than the brute, but it's all about that leap AoE, right? And which is funny because his leap scales with attack speed. So this is a fun one. I've got 4 of them. And you could also use this tech with any monster, you know, that you kind of like. Right, blow up a couple, and then you just see him just a huge vulture going around, you know. So it's a really good time, right? And then you just kind of wait, blow up another 2, and then they just go on. They're just going off with the Tecrods. And then it's because that leap is an AoE, it covers a huge area, and it has no cooldown. So here he is. Right, we'll send 2 out this way. Draw and unearth. And then you just see him go ham, dude. Like the attack speed scales with the leap, so you know he's just leaping extra fast. And then what I usually do is I blow up 2, so 2 of them are under the effect of the Soul Eater. And then when the minion timer comes up, I blow up the next 2. So that way, you know, there's at least 2 monsters that always have the Soul Eater on. And the key is that, you know, I tend to use something that has an AoE, so it clears better. With the ants hit so hard and so fast, and because I have Rupture the Soul, I can get away with just like 3 of them. Right, so let's hit this other breach. Right, Pain Offering. You know, and look at that Vulture. Just huge. It's just a really fun way to, like, kind of use a different jewels and make it feel kind of fresh, you know? It's nice to see that you don't really need, like, you know, Dialas and all this other stuff to do like solo content mapping. I will say, if you're using vultures, if you do decide to use them, they definitely fall in damage department when you're like in a 6-player map. 6-player, 5-player maps, that's where, like, you know, the ant definitely shines because he just hits so hard. So, but even then, like in 6-player maps, I choose to use powered zealots when it comes to clearing like really dense areas, just because of the pierce. As you can see, right, the farming through with these guys, also super fun. Easily clearing. Now, granted, it is like a tight map, so it's pretty easy to get everyone hit. So even in open maps, though, with the right setup, especially surprisingly, even with the brutes, super enjoyable. But yeah, so those are the differences with Last Gasp, the minion revive, and how they changed them, and then, you know, some tech on using the Tecrods for some fun. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy. Peace out. See you next time.